Hello YouTube friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing part 3 of 3 about making these dolls. I call them peg doll bunnies, and today is the third part where I'm going to show you how I make this little bag that they come with. So if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, in part 1 I show you how I paint these dolls and varnish the dolls. And then in part 2, I show you how I make the little cap that they're wearing with the bunny ears. And here we are, part 3. I'm showing you how I make this bag. So you might want to go back and watch parts 1 or 2. You can watch them in any order. It was a bit too much to show the entire project in one video, so I've broken it in 3. So today I'll show you how I made this bag. The items you will need for this DIY project include the following. You'll need some scissors, a crochet hook. Size of the hook doesn't matter for this project. I'm just using the same hook I had used for making the little bunny hat. You need some yarn. I'm using this orange impeccable acrylic yarn because I just love the color, and it turned out that I also love the yarn. And you need a knitting loom. And I chose this knitting loom. It cost me $5, and it comes with this tool there. So this is what I bought. This is the mini loom. It's 4.4 inches long, made by Loops and Threads, coincidentally the same company that made my yarn. And I bought this for $5. Comes with the hook and the loom. You could pay another $3 to get the loom that came with an instruction booklet. I decided that I could Google search and get instructions online. I didn't need the booklet. However, if you're buying this as a gift, I think I would get the one with the booklet. Just so that's kind of nice. So here's the details of my yarn. It is 100% acrylic, machine washable. It's this lovely orange. If we were knitting, you would use a 6mm, recommended 6mm hook. So it's pretty thick yarn. So here's the loom. I'm going to put our scissors aside for now in the crochet hook. Now some of these looms come with a little knob right here on the end. And that's what you would attach the first stitch of your yarn to. You would make a slip knot and attach it to that side. We don't have that on this loom. All I'm going to do is simply tie this in a bow, like how you tie a shoe. Now the reason I'm keeping this so simple is I believe a 9-year-old could do this part of the project. This is my peg doll bunnies. I envision being done with children and adults. This is an Easter craft you do together on spring break or some days off school where you have some time together. So I'm trying to keep it simple. So just tie this the way you would tie a shoelace, because this is going to be untied in about 5 minutes. This isn't going to stay on the loom. So it doesn't matter really, as long as you tie it in a way that you can easily untie it later. There we go. Now to start using the loom, we're going to wrap the yarn once around every peg, and we're going to go clockwise. So some people don't know what that means. That's the direction the hands on a clock that has hands would move. So, go from noon to 6 p.m. and the minute hand would go around. So that's what it looks like, going around clockwise. And you're not going to complete, you're going to go around and then start on the next peg. See? Next peg starts there, around, start the next peg, all clockwise. And the next peg, wrap around, go to the next peg, and then start on the other side. Same thing, we're going the same direction. Oh, came loose, no problem, start again. When you have the first row done here, I like to just keep pushing the yarn down to the bottom of the loom. Just kind of keep things looking neat. So I'm push my stitches down there to the bottom. Now we're going to do this one more time. Wrap around clockwise all the way around the loom. We're back to the very first peg. Pull around clockwise and then start on the next peg at the top of the first peg there. Trying to keep things not too tight, but reasonably, the tension reasonable so it will look good. The beginning of this, using this loom, is the most difficult part. Wrapping around. Now turn it so we can see it better. The next peg, clockwise around. Next peg, clockwise around, all the way to the end. Now what I do when I get here is I'm going to take it around that last peg, and then I'm going to hold it with my thumb there, kind of just hold it tight there so it doesn't come loose while I do the next step. The next step is going to use this tool that they gave us. They called it the hook. So this is what it looks like. We've got 2 layers of yarn wrapped around the pegs. Now you take your hook, there's an indentation at the bottom of each peg. You can get in there under the bottom yarn and just pull it over the top yarn. The bottom loop is pulled over the top loop. One more time, bottom loop over the top loop, bottom loop over the top loop, all the way around the loom. So I've done my first row. Now what I do between each row, that's what I call this when I go around the loom, is I push the yarn down to the bottom of the peg. This is just something I've started doing, and I keep doing this. What I think is that this will keep the tension of my project the same throughout. Just push the yarn down, and I also won't get mixed up about which loop is which loop, right? The bottom loop will always be very different than the top. Now let's wrap around another layer, just like we did before, clockwise from peg to peg. And this is all we're going to do till the bag is completed. So using this loom is pretty easy, and I believe as long as you've got the dexterity to use this tool and hold the loom like this, that any age could learn how to do this. We could have quite young children making the bag part, maybe while someone else is making the hat with the bunny ears. So here we are on round 2. Exact same thing. I'm going to take my tool and come in under the bottom loop, put it over the top loop. And this is all we're going to do. Repeat it over and over and over again till we have the bag the length that we want it to be to fit the bunny. Now that we've done a few rows, it's going to be time to untie that side. Remember, we tied that shoelace kind of knot here on the side. So all I'm going to do is untie it and pull it through the inside of the loom, and it will hang down below the project. I'm doing that now because it starts to be in your way around this point of working on the bag. So I'm just going to tie a little knot here using my crochet hook. I'm going to pull this yarn through one of the loops at the bottom. Not pull tight. Here I still have got the loose end. And then I'm going to take that loose end and put it through this loop I created with the crochet hook. And pull tight, and that will tie a knot here, fasten it at the bottom of the bag. And then I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to do anything else with it for now. We're going to finish back at the loom, doing our loops clockwise and then pulling the bottom loop over the top loop, and we're just going to continue till we got the bag the size we want. It's that easy. I'm finished now getting my bag to the size I want using the loom, and we're just going to measure it here and see what we have in inches. Almost 5 inches, about 4 3/4 of an inch long for the bag. And that's plenty to fit the little bunny in there and to tie it up as well. I'm going to teach you now how to cast off. That's what they call it when you finish using the loom and you want to get your yarn off. So you take off one peg, and I need to use my fingers here. You put it on the peg on its left. So start at the second peg, take the yarn off and put it on the first peg. So now you can see the second peg has no yarn. Now I'm going to move the loop of yarn from the first peg onto the second peg. It doesn't go over or under anything, it just moves from peg to peg. This is just so the next step can reach over, because we're going to repeat what we just did on the next peg. There we go. So now the loop from the third peg is going to come up over the second peg. And start with my tool, but I always need to use my fingers to finish. You need to kind of stretch the yarn a bit there. There we've got 2 loops on the second peg, nothing on the third peg. The bottom loop on this second peg now is going to go over the top loop. So we've got nothing on the third, 1 on the second. And now we're going to move that loop over to the third, doing nothing else but just moving it from peg to peg. So now there's nothing on the first peg, nothing on the second peg. Fourth peg, I'm moving the loop over onto the top of the third. So you should start to see a pattern now. We just keep moving from right to left, bottom over top, move it back over. And we're going to keep going till all the yarn is off the loom in this pattern. So the bottom loop over the top of that one. Now there's nothing on the fourth peg, 1 loop on the third. I'm going to move that over to the fourth, doing nothing else but just moving it up off the third peg onto the fourth peg. Now continuing our pattern, the yarn on the fifth peg is going to go on top of the loop of yarn on the fourth peg. I always need to stretch it with my fingers. The tool doesn't quite work there for me. And then bottom loop goes over the top loop. And now the yarn goes one over. There we go. Yarn from the right to the left, bottom loop over the top loop, yarn moves over one. We're almost done the first half. Yarn from right to left, from that peg to the peg on its left, bottom loop over the top loop, and move it over one. One more time here. That one goes over, bottom over top. Now I'm not going to move it here. I find it easier to just not move this one on this corner. I go over from that corner to that peg. The pattern continues. I find this is less of a stretch to just not bother moving this one. When you do it on your own, you'll see why. I just leave it on that peg for a couple of this pattern. Here, top over the bottom over the top. And then now I've finally moved it over. So we got it clear of all that first half, no yarn on there, and the first peg. And we're in the final stretch here, almost done casting off. The pattern just continues. Peg on the right goes on top of the peg on the left, bottom loop over the top loop, move it one over. There we go. Almost done. Peg over the peg on the left. Bottom loop over the top loop. And move it over one. Sometimes you need to use your fingers here. You got to kind of get some stretch in the yarn. Your fingers can do that better than the tool. So bottom loop over the top, move it over one. We're almost finished. Stuff starts to sometimes get a bit of tension and twist it up in the end. Okay, bottom loop over the top loop, and then move that over. Use your fingers if you need to. And this, I believe, is the last stitch. That one over the top, move her over, and we're almost done. One more time. Right hand, the last peg, over to the one on its left, and bottom over top. And then we're going to be left with one loop on one peg. Now what we're going to do, got just one left. We're going to take the tool and pull it off, but don't pull it tight. Keep it loose. And we're going to make a knot in the top, just like we did when we untied that shoelace kind of bow earlier. Here we've got the loop there. Don't pull it too tight. I used my scissors to disconnect it from the ball of yarn because we needed it loose from the yarn. So I'm just going to make a knot in this similar to what I did before. I keep a loose loop and just pull the yarn through that loop, and that makes a knot at the top. Just make sure you don't tighten that loop up before you pull the yarn through it, because that ends the project. Off the loom and tied up tight. So now we've got a knot on both ends there, bottom and the top. And now is the time where you can make your decision about which part of this you think is the bottom and the top of the bag. One side always looks better, and I choose that to be the top. And then the bottom, I'll just do knots to close it. For the rest of this project, I used a pretty reasonably sized crochet hook. I think it was a 4mm. All I'm going to do is take the threads inside the project. So I'm going to turn it inside out to kind of be able to do that easier. So just taking the threads in, or the loose yarn, the end of the yarn here, I guess tail would be what you call it. And I'm just going to kind of weave it in and out a bit and then tie it in a knot inside. And when you do that, I'm going to cut it with scissors, but don't cut it too short. If you cut it too short, the little end kind of pokes out, but if you cut it long, it will stay inside. I don't know if that made any sense, but when you do the project yourself, it will make sense. I just kind of weave it in and out, and then I tie it down a knot on the inside. And the bottom, I do a similar thing, but then I also tie knots along the bottom to close the bag. The last part of our project here is to make the chain that will close the bag. It kind of pulls it tight, and then you can tie a bow or a knot to hold your bag closed. Now I've been doing this thick. I use 2 strands of yarn to make the chain, or the tie, I guess we call it. Now in this project I used 5 feet of yarn. I recommend you use at least 6 because you'll see this wasn't quite long enough. I could have made this a bit longer. So I've just measured out here 5 feet of this orange yarn, and then I'm going to cut it with my scissors. So here we're going to just tie these 2 ends together, and then I'm going to pull the yarn along its length to keep it in one piece instead of 2 pieces. So we've got tie there, and then I'm going to stretch the 5 feet out like this, and I'm going to actually start using the end here with my crochet hook. First thing we're going to do is make a slip knot. Got this end here pulled tight, and a slip knot I make using my thumb. In part 2, I explained the slip knot as well. So we've got the end there, and the tied end is on the other. So I take my thumb, and I wrap this around my thumb so it's as if my thumb is wearing a little scarf. There you go. Top is over the bottom, crisscrossed. Now I pull it off my thumb, and I pull that yarn through that loop and hold it on the crochet hook. And that's it. That's a slip knot. There are many different ways to do this. This is how I do it. So I'll do it one more time for you. I put it on my thumb as if my thumb is wearing a little scarf. Cross over, around the back, back over the front. And now I'm going to pull it off my thumb, holding it in that position. And then push the yarn through that loop and grab it with the crochet hook. Again, I think this is a 4, 4.5 hook, might be a 5. Okay, now all we're going to do is make what's called a chain. So you've got the slip knot on there, and all we do is pull the yarn through that loop to make a chain, and we're going to continue through the entire 5 feet of yarn. So I've just got my final knot tied there in this chain, which is the tie for the bag, the tie string, I guess that's what you would call it. And I'm going to cut that with the scissors. So I cut both ends just so they kind of look cute here. The ends look kind of neater with the yarn clipped just a bit shorter. You could always put pom-poms on that or beads. You know, be as creative as you want. It's your craft project. So it's a bit over a foot long I've made there. So 5 feet of yarn became 1 foot of a chain. So I think I should have made a bit more. Now to put this into the bag, you just find some natural holes in there from the loom work. Because, you know, the loom doesn't make a very tight knit. So it's pretty easy to just weave this in and out of holes near the top of the bag. And I try to keep it in a straight, like this is about 1/4 of an inch from the top. So I'm going to try to pick all openings here that are 1/4 inch from the top. So it closes quite nicely. And I don't skip too many holes. I'll skip maybe 1 or 2, but I mostly just weave it in and out there near the top of the bag. So this is meant for children, so we want it to be very easy for a child to hang onto the bag using this little string, and to close and tie the bag using the string. So it's kind of both functions at the same time. Ties the baggie closed so Bunny is safe inside, and it gives the child something to hang on to hold their toy. So it's perfect for travel, I thought. So I'm just going to continue to weave this in and out till we go around the entire circle. Here's the finished project. So now we've got our baggie done and the toy is done, and we're going to place it in the bag and see how well it fits. Now I think I was quite lucky that this 4-inch loom turned out to be the perfect size for this project. I didn't own a knitting loom before. I got this idea because I saw someone else doing a project and I thought, well, that's perfect for what I want. I just want something to put my little toy inside. Fits in there perfect. And we tie it up and it's ready to go. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this part 3 of 3. Maybe you watched all 3, I don't know. I hope that you enjoyed watching it, and maybe you'll enjoy making this project yourself, or you just enjoyed learning how I made it. However, most important is I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and take good care of yourself and take care of the people around you. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.